Octopath Traveler 2 is a game of precise intention. Similar to how the pixel art is used to convey visuals, the story, diary entries, and the multitudes of NPC inquiries form a mosaic of a grander image. It can be blurry when zoomed in, but as a whole, forms a world with distinct cultures and history. In my hope to see a clearer image of the world, I want to consider its environmental storytelling, namely the statues. So I counted them all. Though this isn't just me showing a statue and how many times it appears, instead I'll be using the more interesting statues as a diving board into minor theories I have about the grander story, and the less interesting statues for speculation about the culture of Celestia and possible connections between what sometimes seem like isolated areas. The most prominent are the statues of the gods. The 8 gods are said to be resting as the Azure Flames, of which there are 4. Each flame has 2 different statues guarding it. If Temenos' account is literal and not metaphorical, then I think there are 2 ways of seeing this. Each flame could be housing the 2 gods represented by the statues near them. There are some hints about reincarnation, or at least the 8 travelers becoming representations of the 8 gods themselves, and the positioning of the beginning of their stories could be a physical connection between them and their destinies. The other possibility is that only one god resides in each flame. I get this idea from the method the Moonshade Order uses to smother them. The Darkblood weapons are counterparts to only one of the 2 gods, with an interesting coincidence that it's the god on the right. Only one god needs to be defiled, and it may have had to be a specific one as well. Let's look at Petrichor, the Dark Hunter. Her process of smothering the flame in Todohaha is very different from the others. Namely, the Darkblood bow isn't shown or mentioned in the process. Instead, Ori's faith in leaving that particular flame in her care comes from her witnessing the Darkling. Then, the sacrifice is done through the Darkling consuming Petrichor. I can't say for sure that the Darkblood bow wasn't involved. Asking other fans about this revealed some interesting theories on the nature of the Darkblood weapons, but what I do think is that my theory on it being unrecovered is just as plausible. Something I'm this adamant on showing because the wiki states with certainty that it was used, without showing or sourcing why they made that claim. In Diary Entry 17, Petrichor reminisces on when she served Arcanet in her younger years, including the time she came in possession of the Darkblood bow. I think this context shows that these events happened further than 5 years ago, before Roy ran off with the bow. Then, there is no other mention of Petrichor reclaiming it by hunting down Roy. My best guess is that it is a deduction from the fact that a Darkblood weapon needs to be present to smother the Azure Flame. However, I think Roy running off with the Darkblood bow didn't lead to a manhunt. Instead, it led to some improvisation. I believe it's the reason why Arcanet had Ori introduce Harvey to Petrichor in the first place. While a bow is a weapon that represents the Huntress, so is their beast companion. Harvey's experiments led him to restoring the Book of Demons, and through understanding the power of Shadow, led him to create a substitute for the Darkblood bow. Again, I cannot say for certain that this is the case, but I believe my perspective is plausible. And if the Darkblood bow really was missing, then I think the actions of the Moonshade Order further show that there is no Darkblood axe for the charitable, or other Darkblood weapons for the remaining gods. And if only half the gods need to be defiled, then maybe only half are present as flames. There is certainly a theme of things being split in Celestia. Beyond even the continent itself, there's legends of a world of shadow serving as a counterpart, though it's only conjecture based on themes. Alpeiades' mirror is used to reignite all 4 flames, despite only being a relic tied to the Flamebringer, so the Darkblood weapons may not need to be so specific as well. Then there's the second instances of each statue, which have their respective god call out to the Chosen, which could indicate that there are 2 gods resting in each flame, as this is proof of their presence. These flames have been around for a long time, predating most things in Celestia. So then, when were the ruins around them built, and why? 3 of the 4 flames are hidden behind murals in ancient ruins. The Felsun ruins have a mural on the actions of Darkest, meaning these are at most 800 years old. Then, the mural at Todohaha depicts the creatures of legends fighting against the Calamity. This hints that these ruins would have been created soon after their battle as a way to honor them, meaning that they are either 400 or 800 years old. Then, there's the Tranquil Grotto, which has a mural representing the Azure Flame and the gods on... I'm just kidding. These are shapes. It could be that, it could be anything. I don't really know. Anyway, I assume these are all made at the same time because they are built similarly and serve the same function. They hide the Azure Flames. The last is the Grand Cathedral, which seems to be built on top of ancient ruins, or was built during that time and was the only thing kept preserved. There are efforts to preserve it, most recently with the hiring of Vados the architect. Inquiring him in Temenos' first chapter shows he constructed the tunnel underground, but I think this just means he dug 2 holes and made a pathway accessible through a ladder. It's one thing for your background check to miss that you hired a cultist who wants to murder the pontiff. That mistake is actually quite common, but having your background check fail to notice that your architect's construction will collapse in on itself to appear like a dilapidated ancient ruin within the course of 2 years is just embarrassing. The tunnel underneath the cathedral looks more like the cisterns or waterways found elsewhere in the Crestlands and the Brightlands, possibly dating the origin of these ruins with Delstach and Fajal around 800 years ago. There's also Arcanet search using Tansy, which means the locations of these flames have been lost to time, predating even Arcanet's and possibly Claude's ancient existence, so 800 years ago seems the most likely. Hey, this is a video on statues, so let's have a little fun. In the game, I counted 5 unique statues. 2 are outside Timbrain's courthouse, symbolizing salvation and damnation. Within the courtroom is a statue holding scales and a blade, but another is found within the castle. Timbrain is a place of judgment. It's where Oswald's story starts, an injustice that he has to overcome on the course of his journey, and where Casti's story climaxes, her sole desire to heal and be an apothecary, challenged by the need to render judgment on the murderous trousseau. The next is what I've labeled Temple King, within the decaying temple. It has 2 conjurer statues facing it, and with the other decorations also connecting it to the culture of Ku, this could be a depiction of their deity or a worshipped king. The conjurer statues are also in the 5-tiered tower, which is why I named them such. There's about 12 in total. There's a statue in the ascent to the Grand Cathedral of a masked and hooded figure. Perhaps this is in reference to Aber, whose statue is located just a few steps up, or it could be a way to show that the culture that built it honored that god, just as how the cathedral around it honors the Flamebringer. I'm calling it the Bandit, even if I'm not entirely certain what it depicts. Then there's the statue of Agnia's mother and Sai, something I'll talk about in a future video on Agnia. The uniqueness of a statue doesn't necessarily correlate with the importance. There is a statue that appears in multitudes, these freaky looking things, though I only found it in 2 locations, the Wandering Wood and the Decaying Temple. Considering the Decaying Temple's connections to Ku, I'm of the opinion that these statues are meant to convey similar ideas while referring to different things. In other words, I don't think they are directly connected. My guess is that the statue's presence is at both locations to show that some tragedy occurred there, with the mass of statues representing the dead. At the Wandering Wood, I think it's the mourning of the aftermath of Darkest's actions, and with the Decaying Temple, the mourning of many deaths in some war. If there were other designs that connected the 2 areas, there could be more speculation on when the island split, but the designs in Totohaha are unique to that island. There's about 120 total, 80 in the Wandering Wood and 40 in the Decaying Temple, give or take a few for both areas. It's hard to be precise with this one. Speaking of statues which haunt me, I cringed every time I found the statue of a man with a staff and book. In an earlier video, I claimed he was unique, but then I found 5 others. Considering the locations like a graveyard, underneath the cathedral, within the Forbidden Shrine, and the Cleric's Guild, this is most likely a religious figure. The one in the Forbidden Shrine is most confusing, as the location is said to have been built by Fajal. Either the people of Fajal dispersed around the continent when the kingdom fell and spread their culture with them, a culture most likely to have been one in service to the Flamebringer, or the statue was built sometime after the location was rediscovered. If the latter is the case, then I think this is Archbishop Kinsteller. The statue then in reverence to the reason he formed the Sacred Guard and other statues around Solistia as a way to honor him as a saint. The biggest outlier are the 2 in Alron's estate, where they simply seem to be decoration, unless Alron is some secret connection to the ancient city of Fajal and he actually got his wealth from being connected to the I don't know. My favorite statue is probably the statue of Rock. It fascinates me, because most statues are made out of marble. It's Rock's vanity on display. I just think it's funny. Particio sees the first in Clockbank, then 3 more located on Rock Island. Most of the remaining statues are used as decoration, though given their location, I get the idea that they also have some religious connection. Beyond some simply having angel wings, we see these statues in places made for organizations or the populace. This could just be that the gods cast a wide net and have many things that could represent them, but with these statues in graveyards, shrines, and castles, I think they do represent the gods that the cultures want to favor. There's the statues of warriors guarding Timberain and the outside of Castle May, some with blades, some with spears, though the inside of Castle May has speared warriors poised in a fashion I could not find elsewhere. Considering their spears, they could be in honor of Clan Raimei, who seemed to use spears as their weapon of choice, or some pre-existing residents of the occupied castle. Overall, I would say their strangest appearance is in New Delsta, where they guard the theater, and conversely, there's statues of women holding orbs guarding the entrance. Looking closer while editing the video, I see 2 statues of dancers, one on each side of the building. There's also a big statue in the middle. I wasn't sure if I should count it since it's not of a person. It's a fan, which could be an allusion to the Lady of Grace, but fans as weapons aren't really a thing in the main game. And then there's 2 statues beneath it that could also just be carved into the wall. It's the statues of women that lead me to think they represent religious connections, as some have angel wings, and are placed in some areas where there are praying angels and cherubs. They also appear in front of the Shrine of Ulstera, a stadium made to honor the Lady of Grace. The biggest exception would be Mother's Garden. Something about her. I don't know, she just doesn't seem like the pious type, though this location serves as a cover, so it makes sense they would decorate it as such. Then these statues are also with what I call Eve statues, as they seem to depict a woman in a state of nature holding a bird. Being placed outside of the Shrine of Ulstera and commonly alongside other statues in a position that seem to be dancing, I think these are made to represent the feminine beauty of the Lady of Grace. Just as the muscular warriors have rippling chests, these dancer statues have accentuated hips and an endowed bust. Now, speaking of the bust of a woman, another statue that appears nearby is the bust of a woman. While the sprites of this around Celestia are the same, they most likely represent different individuals that are important to the locations they are in, without any interconnectivity. The Sacred Guard's headquarters have helmeted knights on a horse. They're pretty cool statues, but I have nothing to say about them that I haven't already with others. Then there's statues mostly for decorations, like the seated lions, there's a lion fountain in a few areas, and finally, there's 2 snowmen outside of Melia's mansion. I'm counting them. And those are all of the statues I found. Maybe I'll analyze the tile patterns next. That sounds like a fun idea. Maybe pictures, or the plants. I'll count all the plants. Now, for Octopath Traveler 2, the super boss gives an item called the Spurning Ribbon. It prevents all enemy encounters. At first, this came across as the game giving up. There's no further challenge for the players, so why bother? But then I worked on this video. I found spots where I could just walk. With all chests opened and items found, I explored the world because the beauty itself pulled me in. Slowly. And now, I think this burning ribbon is a request. It asked me to take in the world one more time. Thank you for watching.